Don't forget to mute yourself if you're not speaking.
All right, I think the last step for it to go live is it's loading up. I'm gonna mute
Are you
myself.
recording?
Not yet.
Okay.
All right, go ahead and check the Washington State Educators Unite page. Let me know if it's not live.
We're there.
Okay.
All right, we are recording and it's live, and I'll let everybody in. I think the last step to go live. We'll get started in just a second, everybody. Thanks for joining us.
All right, good evening and welcome to Washington State Educators United Safe Schools for Everyone Town Hall. We have the link for our group right here. If you have not joined the page, please go ahead and click on that link that Steph just put in the chat. Thank you, Steph. And join our page. And please make sure to fill out the membership questions if you ask to join, or if you invite someone to the group, please ask them to fill out the membership questions so we know they're an educator, who they are, and we know to admit them in the group. All right, introductions in the chat box. If you could share your name, pronouns that you prefer to use, your district, and your role, we can get a feel for who is in the room. All right, this next thing, it's been a little while since I've done it, but in the tools in Zoom, you should be able to find a annotate at the top. And I am not seeing it right now, but there should be an annotate option at the top of your screen in Zoom tools, and you should be able to find the stamp. If you are able to find that, please put a stamp on the area where you are from. If you are not able to find that, like me, that is okay, and we can move on. All right, let's move on. So, Washington State Educators United, who are we? This is a group like the environment we aim for in our schools, where educators are safe from all forms of oppression. We will advocate for and stand in solidarity with the Black Lives Matter at School movement. We believe that every child, without exception, including undocumented ones, deserves a high quality, free public education with wraparound services to meet the needs of the whole child. WSEU is pro-union and wants to strengthen our unions. All right, if you are new to Washington State Educators United, please tell us about yourself using the link that is about to enter the chat box. Thank you, Steph. And then if you would like to help facilitate some things in a regional group, there's a sign up link for that as well. And then if you have not joined a regional group, but you are in the main page for WSEU, please consider that. There are 8 different regional groups, and I believe that is on the next slide. There are groups in all the different places listed on your screen. So if you aren't in one of those, please feel free to join the one for your region. All right, so this is something we're going to be doing later after we have our speakers, but there will be 3 breakout groups. The reason we want to introduce this now is because of the way we've organized it. The first breakout group will be for all of those people who have most age levels in person or in a hybrid setting in their school or district, because a group of people might want to talk about things organizing around that. And then younger grades in person or hybrid will be in group 2. And then if your school or district, however you feel like you want to classify it, is fully remote and you wish to stay that way, you will have the opportunity to go to group 3. And then I'm going to do this. All right. Please rename yourself by putting a 1, 2, or 3 in front of your name. That way the Zoom host can assign you to the correct group in case you aren't able to put yourself there. And the way to rename yourself, next to your picture in the top right of your screen, you should see 3 dots. Under those 3 dots, you can say rename and then put a 1, 2, or 3 in front of your name. You should be able to select your own breakout room once they're open, but in case you aren't able to, then the Zoom host can put you in the correct room that way. Thank you for doing that in advance. Our agenda today, some brief introductions, guest speakers, and then we will have some breakout rooms, like I just mentioned, for around 15 minutes. After that, we will have brief report backs from each group, probably a couple of minutes per group, some next steps and things that you can utilize in your area, and then a Q&A at the end if people would like to stay on and have a conversation and ask questions. And if the guest speakers are able to stay on, you can ask them questions as well. All right, our first speaker is Adam Aguilera. He is a language arts teacher in Evergreen Public Schools, and he serves as a member of the WEA Riverside and Evergreen Education Association Equity Committees to advance racial, social, and economic justice in public education. At that, I'm going to turn it over to Adam.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for being here this evening. It is amazing to see educators in our community involved in wanting to make sure that we have safe schools for everyone. It's been a difficult last few weeks, hasn't it? Especially with Governor Inslee's new state guidance that was released that sort of sparked these rushed reopenings for schools all across the state, that has made many folks feel concerned for the safety of our students and school staff in our school buildings across Washington state. And tonight, we're going to hear from some educators who are right there in the front lines, some even being in the classroom already, and what their experiences have been. And we're also going to be talking about the values that we stand for and what we are going to be fighting for in the next weeks and months to come, to make sure that we have educators that are vaccinated and school staff, that we're not rushing to reopening when we have cases at an all-time high across this country. We are going to be organizing and standing in solidarity with each other, because we know we're on the right side of history. We know that our organizing and the actions that we're doing tonight is going to make the difference in saving the lives of our students, our educators, and also making sure that for school districts that have claimed that they've committed to racial and social justice and dismantling systemic racism in our schools, that we actually take the time to develop a plan that before any reopening of our schools, that we make sure that our students and school staff and families of color are not disenfranchised in opportunities in education, but are uplifted and funded and taken care of in the middle of this pandemic that has disproportionately impacted our families of color in our communities. And with that, I would like to introduce our next speaker. She is a union sister of mine from Evergreen Education Association, Carmela Lemon. And she's going to go ahead and share with us our values and what we stand for as Washington State Educators United.
Thank you, Adam. So, Washington State Educators United is a grassroots organization with over 9,000 members. And our educators have all gathered together to unite in our values for safe schools for everyone. And these values are our call for action. One of those values is, first of all, there should be no rush for reopening the schools. We need to have educator and community input on how additional grade levels beyond those that are in there now, kindergarten and special ed, that we know that when they go in person, that it's going to be safe, that everyone's going to be held accountable, and that it is transparent. Everyone should know what the stakes are. We need funding for our schools. We need state and federal funding first and foremost. We need to make sure that that funding helps give us ample staffing. And that staffing should include guest teachers, because we're very well aware that without a lack of guest teachers, we are always going to put our students first, and we're going to find ourselves without the opportunity to care for ourselves. So that's very important. We also believe that there should be some ventilation upgrades. We all know that ventilation is very necessary right now. We should have upgraded ventilation right now in a pandemic where the air quality is a huge factor. We should have in-school testing. People should not be going out looking for and hoping that they can acquire a test. And we know that contact tracing is also a big part of that. Appropriate PPE, not just a mask. We should have high quality masks, and we should teachers should not be paying for their masks as well. We need to also make sure that there's training to comply with the federal L&I laws as well. Our third value is no return without vaccines. We know that we can save many lives if we put the vaccine first. 1 out of 4 educators are at risk of serious complications to the COVID-19 virus if they come in contact. I'm one of those educators, and no educator should be mandated to teach in person without being given the option of the vaccine first. We also need to have educator choice. So Washington educators, we're united in choice for each classroom educator to have the option to determine if they want to teach in person or remotely. That should be the educator's choice first and foremost. Our parents have a choice for their children and their learning environment, but we need to extend that choice as well to our educators who always put our families first. And finally, we need to invest in remote learning. Now, educators are making remarkable progress teaching remotely with our students. Our school districts and our state legislators, they have to make ample investments for a robust and equitable distance learning program for families, particularly families of color, who feel safer remaining enrolled remotely because they know what this virus can do for our communities. And so we just want to thank everyone for rallying around us. We want to thank our community members for rallying behind the educators who love and care for your children. And let's all hold our leaders accountable, our state leaders as well as our school leaders. Thank you.
All right, so I'll introduce myself. I'm the one moving the slides here. So my name is William Bauer, and I am a middle school science teacher in Battleground, Washington. And boy, does Battleground live up to its name, let me tell you. We probably all feel like we're living in battlegrounds right now. And in addition to being a teacher, I'm also unpaid farmhand at my family's farm called Bowers Corner Farm in Ridgefield, Washington. And so come with me on a journey down a rabbit hole, the public health data rabbit hole. So join me, okay? This is the sequel to Alice in Wonderland, nobody wanted or asked for. So I had a simple request. How many students and staff have been in schools with COVID-19 so far, just in Washington? How many people did they expose? So a little bit of backstory. So for me, like checking the public health data websites has been sort of a routine going back to 2019 when my school was part of a measles epidemic. And 25% of my students were unvaccinated by choice, and our school shut down remotely 3 school years ago. So it's my 3rd year in a row teaching in epidemic pandemic. So I know where the public health data sits in Clark County, and they do a good job collecting the data. But in early December, Clark County Public Health erased this data from their website and only published cases of transmission before they told you how many students, how many staff had COVID in the schools and at what dates. And then it just so happened like a week later, Governor Inslee changed his definition of what was safe from 75 per 100,000 to start looking at open up schools to in-person learning to 350, you know, with the stroke of a pen. And so that got me motivated. Down the rabbit hole I went, and over my winter break, I submitted over 25 public records requests to county health departments, state Department of Health, OSPI, with the same request language. 1, data on all COVID-19 exposures this school year, and 2, the number of close contacts they may have had that would need to quarantine. I thought this was a pretty simple thing to know, and that they must have this data to make these changes in safety. They must know how exposed teachers and staff have been and will be this year. So here's what I found. This is a little screenshot. So this is from Washington State Department of Health. Start at the top of the bureaucracy. They have no records responsive to my request. Okay, so the same agency that's made this decision, like 1, to increase the threshold of what's safe, and then also to move the vaccine schedule so that younger teachers like myself, yes, I still qualify as a younger teacher, we're going to get our vaccine in April maybe, and there's no record of how much COVID-19 is in our schools. How can they possibly make that decision? Our public health leaders at the state level. Another thing that's kind of happened is that public health departments are shifting the responsibility of tracking this pandemic onto the schools. So they're asking OSPI to tell us about a pandemic, not a public health department. So it's at the state level, but it's also at your local level. And the reason why they've done that is because the level of transmission of COVID-19 has overwhelmed their health departments. So then why are we going back? So let's go to OSPI. Chris Reckdahl stood, you know, arm in arm with, you know, digitally, I guess, with Chris Reckdahl, who wants to open up schools ASAP. So do they know how many COVID-19 cases are in schools? No. They say go contact each individual school. So no state agency is compiling any of this information, but then they're making state decisions that impact the safety of everyone in our state. So in the chat, you could really do us all a favor to we have so many people all over the state here. So in the chat, if you could put the name of your school district, and if you know where if they publicize any COVID-19 data in schools. So, and then bonus points if you can paste the URL in there to see how of the website, so that we can look and see, like, how does your school, how does your county stack up to others? Are they all sharing the same data or different data? So drop that in the chat, and we'll save the chat, and we'll kind of see like how inconsistent they are in terms of collecting this data, and they're not even compiling it. You don't count what you don't care about, which is sad that that's the case. So I went into the county level, and this is just a summary table. I'm still waiting back to hear from many of them. So I put King County there, our most populous county. They said no data, 6 to 8 week wait on your request. So I still don't have any information about what's happened in King County. I'll just go down this kind of my 5 main questions, and you can kind of read it for yourself, and then I'll talk about some patterns that I've noticed. So, is the county keeping count of exposures? So I define an exposure as like how many students and staff are taking COVID into schools. Okay, so of this sampling of across the state, only 3 are keeping track of the 5. And then, is the data available on a county public health website? Only Yakima of this list. Clark County used to have it, and then their removal of it motivated my quest down the rabbit hole of public records requests. Then third question, how many cases of proven transmission at school sites K-12? So look at these numbers. Do these look like they correlate at all with the level of virus in the community? No. Or do they correlate at all with the level of reopening that's occurring in these communities? No, but they should. The problem here is data collection. The county that had experienced a pandemic of measles the previous year is doing the best job because they have trained contact tracers, trained with experiences. So when you think about how our country has handled the pandemic and compare it to Asian countries who have gone through SARS and MERS and bird flu and everything else, like they know how to handle a pandemic. And so Clark County, even though they removed their data, they're at least doing a good job tracking transmission, though we know without any testing and so many asymptomatic cases, this is very underreported. And then the number of staff and students, the fourth question, number of staff and students that have brought COVID into schools. Okay, so some counties aren't even keeping track of that. And again, no correlation with what the disease amount is in the community when there should be a correlation. That would make sense. There is, but it's just not getting tracked or counted. And then the fifth question is, how many close contacts did these individuals have? So this is a really important number. This is, I think, is the most important number when looking at what's the level of disruption COVID-19 is going to have on reopenings. If you can see that like one teacher goes into the classroom, picks up science supplies, and then leaves, okay, and exposes no one, okay, that's one thing. But if it's an elementary music specialist who is having exposure with 100 kids in a day, that's going to be a lot of close contacts. That's a lot of people who have to quarantine. And if your county or your schools aren't publicizing the number of close contacts, you have no idea of how many times schools have had to shut down and go back in person. So that is a vital number that we need to have to make important decisions about what our reopening has been like or what it's going to be like. So here's some initial conclusions on very poor quality data. If this data set was given to me from a student, they'd probably get like a D-. That's being generous, Okay, that's like some COVID grading scale, like we don't want to fail you, D-. So asymptomatic spreading among adults and school settings is underreported, and each county and school is doing it differently, and none of the data is being compiled. So number 2, the count of staff and students in schools with COVID-19 and the quarantine numbers of close contacts is important to understand the level of transmission COVID-19 has on in-person learning. In my preliminary data, it looks like the number of staff and students that bring COVID in to schools quadruples the amount of people that have to quarantine and go back and be isolated or test or potentially expose their family members at home. And this like three to 4 times, like that's a huge range. Like it could have been 100 or it could have been 0. So I think like the key question that comes out of all of this with this really incomplete data, how can parents get a sense reasonably of how safe it is to send their kids to school when they have no idea how much COVID is in the school, and that if it's getting kept track at all, it might be secret from them. And this is important for teachers as well, because it's the parent's choice, an uninformed choice, that is going to determine staffing in most districts, and how many of our teachers are going to be forced into work in unsafe conditions before their vaccine arrives. So thank you for joining me in this journey down the rabbit hole of public records requests. But what, like, was it worth it? Yes. Okay, what did it bring me? It brought me greater transparency. My district started to report their exposure data on their website. They still don't have the amount of people who were close contacts, but it's a step in the right direction. The media specialist for my district knows that I made 25 public records requests, and that she found that out on Friday, and on Monday they published it on their website. But not all school districts in my county have done that. It used to be on the public health website, one spot. Now it's, some districts have it, some districts don't. But without this advocacy, it would be hidden still. And then parents, who have to decide whether assess the risk for their children, they don't have the data to make that decision. So it's brought me access. Tacoma Pierce County Public Health, where I used to teach in Tacoma, they felt so bad that they didn't have any data to give me, that they just gave me the phone number, direct line to Dr. Cam Solomon, the chief epidemiologist. And then I got to ask him any question I had. And let me tell you, like, having that access is important, because it kind of gave me indication early on that the county health departments and the State Department of Health, they're not united in this vaccine rollout or this level of this 75 versus 350 per 100,000 number. Okay, but being public employees, they might not be able to speak out. I can run my mouth a little bit more because I've got a strong union, but people who are in county health departments don't have the same that same ability. And it's also brought me media attention. Just before this call, I was on the phone with a reporter for the Seattle Times for 40 minutes, and there should be a story probably Tuesday or Wednesday of next week about the work I've been doing. So so that's kind of the end of this part of my presentation. I also conducted an interview with Melissa Glasscock, who's a respiratory therapist at Legacy Salmon Creek in Vancouver, Washington. And so the next few slides are going to be my interview with her. She wasn't able to make it to this presentation because she's actually working in the hospital right now with COVID patients as we speak. She might, if depending on how long this event goes, she might be able to get into the question and answer, but you know, ask your questions if you have, and I'll try to forward them on to her. She had been interviewed recently by the Columbia newspaper. There's the headline down there: nurses describe huge emotional toll amid high COVID-19 numbers in Clark County. And so I asked her some follow-up questions about kind of what's the impact on teachers and children and things like that. Okay, so this is my first question. How do you think expanding in-person learning at the current COVID-19 levels would impact your work in COVID-19 patients at the hospital? So to her, it seems like it doesn't make any sense that we've shut down when their cases were lower. Seems risky to her, even though we've learned more about the virus. It still seems risky. And she said that I can only assume it would add to our COVID-19 levels. So question number 2, current recommendations for the vaccine have teachers under 50 having to wait till April to be vaccinated. In your work as a respiratory therapist, how have you seen COVID-19 impact people under 50? She said she's cared for multiple COVID-19 patients well under the age of 50 who have needed mechanical ventilation, life support, critically ill. Question 3, in determining who gets the limited amount of vaccine, what factor do you think is most important? Having pre-existing conditions, age, or 3, how likely you are going to be exposed to the virus? And her answer was, my personal opinion is that anyone being forced to work in a large group setting, teachers, should be vaccinated. As far as the age and pre-existing conditions, she says that a wide range of patients become deathly ill from COVID-19. It knows no age or pre-existing conditions. Question 4, you received your vaccine recently. How has it changed your feeling going to work? So this is, I think, as of Monday, she got her second vaccine. And she says, like, her PPE hasn't changed at all, even though she's vaccinated. So that's, I think, an important message to remember. And that it's given her hope when the last 10 months have been a nightmare. As I mentioned before, with the measles situation, she sees that schools are going to play an essential role in vaccinating children and staff, and she's hopeful that, you know, it's going to become a requirement to have to go to school, so that her work as a respiratory therapist can go back to normal. And so I kind of asked her, like, what's been the best, like, thank you she's received? And this kind of made me laugh that a guy brought a camel by the hospital. I didn't get her picture from it, but I hope there is one of this camel. But really, the best thank you can give to a respiratory therapist is wearing your mask and complying with the guidelines to help stop the virus. So let's turn it over to Susan.
All right, thank you, William, for all of that very good information and for taking the time to do those records requests, because I think by asking those questions, you do get a little bit of movement from your district. I know I've made some inquiries, and we do have a COVID dashboard, so we do see, I think it's a little bit behind. So anyway, so I'm going to share with you, I am actually working in a hybrid model, and I prepared some things to share with you. Let me just go ahead and find that. Thank you. All right. So I've been working in public education. I'm old new. The last 7 years, I've been back in the Pasco School District. I'm a bilingual educator working with English language learners. And the school that I work at is a Title I school. We have a majority of our students are English language learners, and I would consider us a bilingual school. William, if you want to go ahead, if people want to focus, you don't have to share my fancy, beautiful face there, so people can focus. So I've been working in hybrid, and I'm going to just say it's the worst. You can see behind me, I did put, this is my classroom now, and this is my classroom before. So we know that cases are skyrocketing in our state and our local communities. In this call, we agree that it is not the time now to risk our students and staff and their safety. Additionally, continuity of instruction. So when my school board voted to send K-5 back in person, so I'm a 5th grade teacher, I prepared my will, including my durable power of attorney and living will. A little bit about my situation. I am a single full-time parent with 4 children of my own, and they depend on me, and I need to be healthy and whole for them. The stress of saving up personal sick leave now that COVID leave has run out is really taking its toll on me. There's a lot of unknowns, and I just feel really worn down. I learned today as well that one of my colleagues that I work closely with is quarantined for the next 2 weeks. Before we shifted to hybrid model, I had 100% of my students attending and connecting and about 85% engagement with my 19 students. Since that shift, I have 7 distance learners and I have 12 in-person learners. Attendance is inconsistent and spotty. This past week, I saw 8 in-person students of the 12 that were supposed to meet with me. 6 students were out at various times in the months of November and December because of quarantine. Either somebody in the family was positive or they were a close contact. Juggling the workload of hybrid is exhausting. Even taking away my distance learners, which our district is proposing will happen, keeping 12 to 15 students in 2 different groups, the learning cycle is really disruptive. Every single time we have a change in the learning schedule, the families, the students, and staff were scrambling to learn the new routine to make adjustments. Our specialists or interventionists probably have it the worst as they shuffle their schedules and tend to work with some of our most vulnerable learners. Additionally, our special ed students, I don't believe that they're getting the minutes that they are required because of these shuffles in routine. And I think it's just kind of being, swept under the rug. We lose precious connecting and learning time with all these new routines. And the learning model, in my experience and opinion, is not consistent, it's not predictable, and it's not sustainable. It doesn't meet the needs of all students. Remote teaching, while it may be challenging for students and teachers, it's predictable, it's consistent. Students know where their teachers are. Students and families have that predictable routine to fall back on. They have more contact time with teachers. Before the hybrid, I had 2 hours daily with students in addition to what I labeled homework club. We had another hour a day built in. So I had a minimum of 3 hours per day that students could have access to me, as well as by appointment. So there's no risk in remote teaching. There's no risk of having to close down the class, a grade level, or building because there aren't enough healthy staff to adequately supervise students. And we've been hearing in the news a lot of stories about that. So hybrid or what we call blended learning reduces access to teachers as they do their best to balance the student cohort's workload and lesson planning, create additional stress on staff. We do our best to be flexible and meet the needs of both our in-person students and at home. And again, even in a hybrid model, you still have students at home. They're not all with you all the time. So there's those check-ins. For remote learning is amazing because it's prioritized health and safety of all students. It also means, again, predictable, consistent, and sustainable routine for robust teaching and learning, which considers the needs of all students, including the most vulnerable, our BIPOC students, English language learners, special services students, and academically at risk students. Until communities can get their community spread under control so that school schedules can be consistent, the health and safety of all students and staff can be prioritized, and students have as much or more access to teachers in remote learning, my experience is it is better to wait. There is no group work. Desks are all facing forward, as you can see. Students may not move around the room freely. They're wearing masks. There's no carpet time. The pandemic hybrid classroom is a sterile environment. It lacks warmth. It's in stark contrast to what we normally provide, the welcoming, bright, boisterous classrooms of pre-COVID. Additionally, in my experience, a hybrid learning model is not an equitable, sustainable learning model for Washington learners. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Susan, so much for sharing your story. And Susan is going to be one of the leaders of the breakout groups. So you guys can connect and ask her more questions. So yeah, give it up for her in the chat. Thank you so much. That's a hard experience you've had, and thank you for sharing and being so open. So I'm going to introduce our next speaker, who is a student, Sophia Torres, and it was really important as one of the organizers of this event that we have a student participate in this panel. When Governor Inslee announced the changes to the metrics, he didn't have one teacher or one student, those most impacted by his decision, to be a part of that. So we're really happy to have Sophia here. And I'm going to share the slide again. And Sophia, she attends, she's a student at Kennewick School District. And so Sophia, I want to ask you, what has remote learning been like for you and your classmates?
So for me personally, it's been a tough adjustment from just regular schooling to online. And I feel like that's been that way for everyone, you know.
Mhm.
For my classmates, I've noticed that because the transition was so stressful for everybody, that communication for resources just wasn't there, whether that was tutoring, mental health resources if they needed to drop classes, that was ignored. It was mostly just focused on, oh, this is how it is now. So personally, I've been able to adjust just fine. My grades are doing well. Mentally, I'm doing well. I'm more concerned for my classmates who are definitely struggling and aren't receiving the resources that they need.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so we got connected just like I think less than 48 hours ago when I saw that your mom shared a petition that you had started asking for Kennewick school leaders to delay in-person learning. What motivated you to start your petition?
So locally, there has been multiple marches and protests and rallies to reopen schools, like physical gatherings of maskless people in massive amounts. And of course, we're going to adhere to guidelines. We're going to adhere to social distancing. So our voices won't be heard. They won't be physically seen either. So by putting a petition forward, you could see that physical number of the people that did not want to return.
Mm-hmm. Yes. So, so what would Katie, if you could drop the link to her petition in the chat. And people can sign that. So what's been like the response from the school district from your petition?
So I emailed the petition to all the school board members and my district superintendent, and only one responded and said, "Thank you very much for showing this to us." That was it. Last night was the school board vote, and they voted for middle and high school to return. Middle is coming back on January 25th, and high school is January 2nd, or no, February 2nd. Dates, got them. But so ultimately, it did not work. But this isn't the end of it. There's still opportunities for us to contact OSPI and the state, and it's just unfortunate that the school board did not take our voices into account.
Well, we have a lot of people on this call from all across the state, and even if you don't live anywhere near Kennewick, this is a global pandemic, right? And you signed that petition for Sophia. We're teachers here on this call, and part of our job is elevating student voice. And the governor didn't have any in his announcement. So get on that petition, sign it, and maybe we can get all the school board members to respond to Sophia. There's also in the presentation, there's a link to a news story. So it's making an impact. You're getting the other side of the story out there while not spreading the pandemic, which is an important thing. So thank you so much, Sophia. It's been an honor to meet you. You're like an inspiration. And you're going to be able to like hang out and be part of the breakout groups. And you can answer questions there. So you're going to inspire a lot of adults to kind of step up their game to see what you've done. I think last time I checked, there's 400 signatures on your petition, and there's going to be a lot more after this night. So thank you again, Sophia, so much for agreeing to be a part of this. All right, let's turn it over to Stephanie Price.
Hey, everybody. I am happy to be here in this space with you all to talk about education issues. I'm a parent and an educator. I'm actually a speech language pathologist, and I have been in public education for 11 years. So a lot of experience in the classroom. My child is in middle school, 7th grade. So, we all know how difficult middle school is, right? It's really hard. Socially and academically, things start to change too. And we actually just moved to Washington in September. So he is a kid who is not only learning virtually, but has no connections to any other students or the teachers or even the school building because, so I know that sometimes we like to spotlight people, but please don't spotlight me because then I can only see myself talking and that freaks me out. So I have to be able to see the whole gallery view. All right, there we go. It pops up. All right, so as a parent, the thing that is really concerning to me about the prospect of sending kids back into school buildings is there's no vaccine. There's no vaccine for even teachers yet, right? Like we are not even being offered the vaccine as educators who are being asked to go back into buildings with a virus that is deadly, that is unsafe, and that has lasting impact on our physical bodies, right? It not only changes the lungs, it changes the brain. It can impact so many of our body's systems for those especially who are immune compromised. But we're talking about sending students back into school when there's not even a vaccine that's approved for them yet. And at this point in the school year, it makes no sense to me because by the time we all go back, by the time we get through this hybrid thing, it's going to be the end of the school year. The kids need consistency. Educators need consistency. You all know this is hard. This is one of the hardest things I have ever done as an educator, trying to build connections with my students across a computer when they have no idea who I am. They've never met me before. It's just so different. I miss being able to go to my building and hug my babies. To give them love, to see their faces, to give them high fives. I do. I miss that. I do want to go back, but it is absolutely irresponsible to think about sending our students that we love so much back into buildings where they are not safe. Yes, a student can wear a mask. Yes, students can have space and sit supposedly 6 feet apart, but we all know what a real classroom looks like, right? It's not 6 feet. What about ventilation? What about all of those times when they are having snacks in the bathroom, eating lunch, at whatever they're doing? There's so many opportunities in a building for our students to be exposed to this virus. It doesn't make any sense to me. But, I can definitely identify with some of what Susan said because I am a single mom. And, my son only has me right now. Like, what would happen to him if something happened to me? And the thought of having to make a decision between potentially like going back into a building and contracting a virus that I bring home to him, or vice versa. And then what if I can't work? Then I cannot make money for our family. What if I get him sick? Then it's just, there's so many unknowns, and there's so many things that I know we're all thinking about and we're all struggling with. But what's really important right now is the safety of our educators and our students. And the plans that I have seen and the things that are happening are irresponsible. It is irresponsible to send anyone back into a building that isn't vaccinated, particularly our children. And I just want to also say that I support educators doing whatever they need to do in order to stop that from happening. And if that means taking action and taking job action, then that's what we're going to have to do. It's just, I want to encourage all of you to remember the power that we have in a collective voice, that as educators, that as parents, we are the experts. We know what our students need. We know what other educators need, and that is to be safe, to be healthy, and they are absolutely learning where they are. How many of you can say that you are doing everything that you know in your power to make sure your students are learning right now? All of you. Sorry, my timer was going off. Because that is what educators do. And our students can learn virtually, and they can be safe while they're doing it. It might look different. Their progress might look different, right? I know my son, his progress looks different right now. His learning looks different. And as a parent, yes, I do have concerns that maybe, he's missing something, or he's going to fall behind. Like, there's that little thing in my head that says that as a parent. But when I stop and I think about it, what I know is that his teachers are doing the best that they can. My son is doing the best that he can. And as a parent, I'm doing the best that I can. And in order to do that, we have to remain safe, and we have to continue to fight for what we know is best. So I appreciate all of you for the work that you are doing in your buildings, with your students, with your kids every single day. This really is a profession that we're making a difference for everyone. So I thank you all for doing that. And I'm going to pass it on to Adam and Stephen, who are going to talk a little bit more about their petition.
Thank you, Steph. I really appreciate it. And thank you for speaking your truth as a parent, as an educator. Our voices have been coming together in a lot of different ways. And one of the efforts that Washington State Educators United has been involved with has been the Safe Schools Washington petition that within a couple of weeks was able to collect over 16,000 signatures. And this petition made it very clear its opposition against changing the state guidelines that Governor Inslee ended up doing. And it also advocated for educators to have voice through local bargaining to decide how schools reopen or remain open, and really having that threshold. With the new state guidance, there is no cap of the number of cases, illness and death that would close down elementary schools automatically across Washington State. There's no cap threshold, and that's appalling. And so the petition also called for statewide leaders to coordinate comprehensive testing in schools, effective contact tracing, and supply of appropriate PPE and training for staff to do their jobs safely. And this letter, along with over 16,000 signatures, was delivered to Governor Inslee, to OSPI State Superintendent Rakedahl, the Washington Department of Health, and our legislative leaders in the State House and the State Senate. And since then, we have been taking copies of this petition as grassroots educators and sharing it with our local school boards and our local legislators as the session for the legislation in Washington State has just begun. And so, Stephen, if you wanted to add to that and kind of segue into another action in relation to the Washington Education Association. Oh, I'm sorry, and Bellevue as well. Stephen, can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm sorry, you guys. I literally right now, the Bellevue Education Association is voting on a vaccine first motion. So I am sorry. I can't believe these two things are happening at the exact same time. So my apologies for being distracted. But yes, we just wanted to provide these resources for you guys as examples of documents that you could use in your local or your region. And so when we break out into small groups, I hope you will find these resources helpful. We've put them up on the screen and also provided links to them, both polling and petition, for example. And I think we've got the Safe Schools Washington. I think, Adam, you introduced that. So that the Safe Schools Washington was signed statewide. The Bellevue petition is active right now, and the poll we used in Bellevue also. So just so you don't have to reinvent the wheel.
So these are grassroots tools that you can use right now in your own local school district to start organizing members, organizing the community around how we can have safe schools for everyone, in advocating to your local school boards and to your local legislators. So as Stephen said, there's no need to reinvent the wheel. It is all here for you as a resource to use.
Just really quickly, we are working on a way to get you that link. There are some comments about the link not working. So we are trying to figure out a way to make sure everybody gets that. And maybe later just check on the WSCU Facebook page, and we can post that one if we need to.
All right, Stephen, were you done with that, or were you still going to share some things about Bellevue?
No, because literally they're voting right now. And maybe
Okay.
at the end of the meeting, I'll get to share good news. By the way, they're probably also going to approve the WEA resolution from Tuesday night. So they're voting on both things right now. So stay tuned.
All right, thank you. So we will hopefully get some news from him at the end. So we know that the guidelines for school reopening have changed in December. Governor Inslee and the State Health Department changed the guidelines from 200 cases per 100,000 to 350 cases. So now schools can open when cases are higher in their area than what they could before. And as educators who are not respected in our field, we know that many districts will do the absolute minimum. So they will open at those highest number of cases. We also know that some school districts are already open, at least in a hybrid model, at more cases than that. So we must call for returning to remote learning in those districts and not go into unsafe working conditions. So originally teachers were in the second major group to get the COVID vaccine after healthcare workers and nursing homes. We know that these phases have changed as of last week. First, people over 70 and people over 50 in multi-generational households. That's grandparents, children, and then grandkids, followed by those who are high-risk critical workers over age 50. After that, we have people 16 and over with 2 or more comorbidities or underlying health conditions. And then after that, we have high-risk critical workers under age 50, which is not until April. So many of us, including those in buildings, will not get vaccinated until probably April. And we know that children under 16 cannot get a vaccine, just like Steph mentioned. So we're still opening our schools, even though it's not safe for kids. And this is the new vaccine phase guidelines. So as you can see right now, we are going through people over 70 mostly, and then B2 in February. All of those people are over 50. That's the bolded area. B3 in March, 16 and older, but only if you have multiple health conditions. And then B4 in April is basically the rest of us, people under 50 who work in a high risk condition, a high risk area. So next we will get ready to go into our breakout rooms. We have our 3 categories that we mentioned earlier. Number 1, for most age levels, in person or hybrid. Number 2, for younger grades, being in person or hybrid. So in some cases that might be K through 2, some might be K through 5, but we know that in those situations, we probably don't have middle or high school in person. And then group 3 for fully remote, at least in your building, if not district-wide. So if you have not yet, we've made multiple requests in the chat. If you have not yet, please go to your picture or to the participants. On your picture, it'll be the 3 dots at the top right. And in the participants, it'll be to the right of your name. You can click more and rename. Please rename yourself. Put yourself in group 1, 2, or 3 based on your situation. Put the number before your name so that the host can put you in the proper breakout room in case you are not able to put yourself there. Once you get into the breakout room, you will have a Google folder to take notes. So you'll be able to, it's labeled 1, 2, and 3. There will be a facilitator in each room and they will have access to those notes. And you will have someone take notes and then prepare somebody to speak out. So when you get in there, decide who's taking notes and who's going to share afterward. And it's just going to be a couple minutes, not a lot, just to give everyone in the whole room some time to hear from each of those major groups. And then that link, if it hasn't come your way, will come your way in a moment. Here we go. There's the Google folder. All right, I can send that to everyone. Go ahead and open that link. There's the breakout room documents. And there are a set of questions which are on the next slide. This time we decided to have a discussion question menu. Here's a bunch of things that you can think about. Each group might choose to talk about something a little different. What is your district's plan to return to in-person learning and what metrics are they using to inform their decisions? Some people already know all of this information, others might not. What kinds of actions would you participate in and organize? Do you know what would trigger your building or district to close and return to virtual learning? Many people don't know what would trigger because districts are saying we're opening at this level, but they don't know what would cause their schools to close again. How would you organize if your union is split? And what resources do you need to organize members in your local? So please have these discussions, pick a couple of questions to talk about, focus on what's most important for everyone. Maybe when you get into your room, you vote on the questions that have the most votes you'll focus on, whatever works for your group. And then be prepared to share out which questions you talked about and what the major things that were discussed afterward. And then yes, Maya, thank you for sharing in the chat. If you do need to leave at any point, make sure to check out the Facebook page because we will have the live video and the resources as well. So please make sure your name is changed so we have the numbers.
All right, I'm going to go live, everyone. And if you don't get in the first round, I'll place you in after the first round so we can get this rolling. Here we go.
It's going pretty well so far.
The main room is still live on Facebook. So if you want to join another breakout room, by all means. We apologize for everyone who's watching us on Facebook Live, but we want to keep the breakout rooms private so people can be open and speak their minds. Breakouts will be about 15 minutes. So if you want to take a break, if you're watching us on Facebook Live, take a break for 15 minutes and come back and we'll have some next steps. and then we're gonna have some question and answer and discussion, but that'll be offline. So if you haven't joined us, you want to take part in all that, please feel free to sign up and join the call. Is there anyone who's still in here that wants to go into a breakout room? Let me know.
Yeah, I think I'm supposed to be in 3
Okay.
for like full-time remote.
All right. What's your name again?
Catherine Bauer, Katie Bauer.
Okay, yeah, I don't see a number by your name, so.
Yeah, I probably did that part wrong. I was trying to read something else while she was explaining.
You said 3? 3?
Yeah,
Okay. You're good. There's only 3 other people left. Any of you want to, Aaron, you got a question? I see your hand raised, Aaron. Go ahead. Room 2, I see. Gotcha. Sorry about that. All right, Kenny, Sean, either of you want to go into a room? Let me know.
Can I go to the room if they're a full remote?
For who said that?
No, Sean.
Sean? Hopefully that worked. Kenny, you're the last person left. Would you like to go into a room? No pressure. All right, just another mention for those who are on Facebook Live. We have breakout rooms for another 12 minutes. Those are not on Facebook Live. We'll be returning to have a short spot on next steps. And then the meeting will end. You can still join us on Zoom if you go to the Washington State Educators Unite page. There's a public announcement that has the Zoom and all that stuff if you want to join us. Thanks for watching. We'll be back live in about a little over 11 minutes. Hey, Heidi. So they're in breakout rooms right now. I can pop you into one. We still have about 10 minutes left.
Okay. I'd be in category 2, I guess.
Okay, so I think that's the
hybrid. They're in hybrid right now.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you.
No worries. There you go. For anyone watching on Facebook Live, just another update. We have about 9 minutes left in breakout rooms before we'll go back to live. And there'll be a short report on some of the next steps. to try to get people organized. So take a break. We'll see you in about 9 minutes. Just an update for anyone watching, hanging out on Facebook Live. We have just over 3 minutes left for breakout groups. Evan will be coming back and we'll have a short report on next steps in the struggle, what educators and allies, community parents, students can do to put pressure on those in power. And then we'll be closing off the Facebook Live and having a question and answer offline. But if you want to join us still, you can click on that Zoom link on Washington State Educators Unite and join us if you'd like to take part in the conversation. Thank you.
Sarah from group 3, you were like mid-sentence or like quarter sentence. Go ahead, you have the floor with the whole group.
Oh, I don't know if I want to say this to everybody, but
Oh.
I was just saying, we organized a strike almost statewide before. If you know, it's not safe for teachers to go back. I've struck before and strike again.
Yep, I think I have a cumulative of 21 days on the picket line. With the battleground strike being 12 days, and then Tacoma I think was like 8 or 9 days.
William, we got to wrap up, man.
All right.
We'll have a Q&A in a few minutes. Let's wrap it up. So respect everyone's time. So anyone who wants to continue to talk in about 5 minutes or so, we'll turn off the live and we'll have a question and answer. Susan or Katie, you're up, right?
Do we want to do a quick share out, or?
I think we're pushing our 1 hour into an hour and 30 minutes. Maybe if everybody feels great, let's go ahead and finish the last few slides maybe and push ahead, and then Q&A for anybody that wants to stick around.
Sounds good. William, if you could continue sharing the slides when you're able.
Sure.
All right, so as I speak, if someone else, Susan or Steph or whoever, can share these links in the chat, that'd be awesome. So one of the things that we did in the late summer when we were thinking about going back to schools in person in September was letter writing. We did a week of action leading up to the National Day of Action on August 3rd. And that is one option that we still have, writing letters to Governor Inslee, Superintendent Rechtall, as well as the Department of Health, because we know that honestly it is Inslee and the Department of Health and business leaders that are making the decisions for us. And so those are the people that we need to be able to convince that this is not the best decision. And it would be, of course, much louder and heard if it wasn't just educators, if we had students and parents and community members reaching out, because educators aren't listened to, but parents and some students really are. And it is really disappointing that some students aren't listened to, but we really need that huge push from all over the place. So here's a couple letter templates in the chat for you. And then we also did a call-a-thon in our week of action, and we have the phone numbers listed here for Inslee, Rechtall, and actually Betsy DeVos should have been taken off of this slide, but she's gone. There is a sample script on the slide, and it's in the link. I know, Susan, right? There's a sample script that you can utilize. It is just a sample. Feel free to change whatever you want. Don't do the exact same thing as everybody else, especially in letters, because they won't even look at it if it looks exactly the same. All right, moving forward. One of the other things we did is only when it's safe videos on social media. So people would take videos of themselves. I've seen Susan has done some of this. I've seen a lot of people do this nationwide, where you just make a really quick video, just a couple minutes, explaining why you feel unsafe going back to work or sending your children to school if you are a parent. And you can refer to those letter templates and sample script for ideas, but again, personalize it. It's all about you and your situation. And then there's a link to some best practices for making a video that someone in Seattle put together for us. And then this is an organizing dashboard from National Educators United. I was told to share widely, which is awesome. So I'm grateful I get to share it with all of you today. And this is full of tools and information. There's a lot of really great things. The town halls that National Educators United has held related to COVID can be found in this document as well, including safe air in your schools. We've talked about MERV filters. We've talked about ventilation. There's a ventilation town hall, and the videos for that and the slides for that are in this dashboard. It's all there. We know it's not enough to just receive resources. People really need to get together and actually organize. And National Educators United and folks from NEU have worked together to help people feel confident in organizing and know how to organize around safe schools. But you can find a ton of resources here. As we share it in the chat, please, please, please look through it. They're all organized. You can see the hyperlinks at the top, organizing basics, COVID, etc. It's awesome. And then this is getting ready for our Q&A. So this is a time where we can ask questions, share ideas, etc. We can continue those breakout conversations. As we do this, please type stuck in the chat if you have a question or something you'd like to share. Please be respectful and please keep your comments to a couple of minutes if you can, because if we keep it within 1 or 2 minutes, we have time for more people to have conversation. And then we will stop recording. We will turn off the live. This will be a safe space for everyone to talk freely. So Darren will be ending the live here in a moment.